Hi. I'm not going to be loud because I'm on the train. But
Caltrain is a proof of payment system. Please have your ticket, Clipper card, or mobile phone ready for inspection. Failure to comply will result in a $75 administrative citation. In the event of an emergency, please stay seated and listen carefully to the instructions from the train crew or emergency responders. If you are instructed to use an emergency exit, use caution and walk to the side of the tracks at least 15 feet from the closest rail.
okay, getting back to what I was saying, and I was kindly interrupted and couldn't talk. Why did I not attempt to talk? Let me explain. Let's say somebody does something historic in intelligence that others have buried in the US on the coastlines. Let's say somebody broke airspace and is famous for that, even with their enemies, German airspace, like Basler and others who are not record breakers, who work for the German airspace and think that you're some kind of freak from the sky. And beauty. Having said that, one day comes along sulfur acid on the coastlines, and a little phoenix is reborn as a retarded version of that girl to make you feel powerful about you being the best on the planet, such as. I'm not going to say it out loud, but you know when they say suck the dick of the Chinese and the Russians and the Western Europeans and the UN, and they say, oh, those children don't exist. There's no such thing as record breakers. And then there's losses. You can see it from China. You can see Western Europeans saying, okay, she's famous for something, which is the space breaks and the tech breaks. And you can see it coming from China, right? On the coastlines, from Europe. In other words, who cares how much intel is lost on the coastlines? We're the best. We're not going to care for ships going down with that girl. We're not going to care for platinum hairs in Western Europe, in basements and metros in 80 countries connected off with wires to bus. I'm not going to waste my breath to say 20 states in the US. Why? Because if it happened in 80 countries, it's obviously going to happen in the US with the CIA.
Please use the 6 northernmost cars.
Especially if it was alive before and they had the intel. But if the intel dies, then what we call the Holy Grail is the Holy Grail, the relic. In other words, all your PhDs and your Nobel Prize could reopen our Nobel Prizes. So when they try to tell you in a mentally retarded way after sulfur acid that the share of the millennia had go to the shits, give me that. So it's not that I'm being a bitch about this, no, because I'm not the one claiming it. The world is. So when Dirk-Jan van Dam in The Hague, or the Bureau de Veritas, or others like the Roman Tribunal for your extras,
this is
which is unnecessary for me,
making select stops
makes a point in that history that says, I'm really sorry, but, this shit don't grow on trees, and she wasn't even alone. You're calling her names, you're sending some Mossadian or some derelict Jews who hate her, or some white trash who are, federal prisoners, or some Hispanic federal prisoners from LA as psycho followers, and you're doing it in public. You're doing it, you create it yourself. In other words, you created your own losses, which you say you didn't care about, but you did. So that's how the CIA operates. You see, the CIA, who has the Nobel Prizes, usually doesn't even show to the major population what it's doing. You can know what it's doing, quote unquote, but it doesn't give out the inside out of headquarters. The same with the FSB, the same with the German Bundestag Aerospace, the same with the inner circles of Woolwich, the same with the UN, the same with any country. Correct? So that's what I'm telling you. If you're mentally retarded and you're still speaking about careerists or I'm better than you, and I did this and I did, look how fast I am running and stuff like that. If this is the stage we're still at after self-harassment with our swipe 221 Delph, then I have a problem talking to you. You understand? I have a problem explaining to you that a PhD piece of paper, you can be a fucking genius, it won't make a fucking difference in the real worlds of intelligence, whether it's out there or whether it's here. Especially if you see that shit coming from China, flyers or runners and stuff. Now, considering the work was on the coastlines and abroad, which would explain why in Western Europe those alcoholics have platinum hats. So it's not that I'm being a bitch about it. This is all news on the news, the nails. I'm not here in a blink of time to come in and out, and then you get jealous even of that baby, because it's like, you can. Because she has an easy life. She's not the same girl. She's a replacement tripod. She doesn't deserve what you have. Okay, but that's also the definition of jealousy, especially if 221 just comes and goes from blink in time. First of all, you have to know what that original Jamila did on the coastlines. Okay, look at this one and say, fuck it. Okay, I'm a tripod replacement. Don't take much, but make gas. Another thing that they said was weird was that there's blues after self-harassment. In other words, if you ask the self-harassment on the coastlines, believe me, they ain't gonna bring back any Ubermensch or blues for you. They ain't. I always think about my after project of the 21st century. That's actually not the name for it, but okay, locally speaking, in those 80 countries. So I'm not at the end of stupid times. There's even the Scotland film to stay in Rome for retirement, because there's losses and there's losses. Okay? But if you have bad guys and other criminals, that's cool, man. You want the chaos around the world. You do. So these are the basics for them. Now, to create a highly intelligent killers, or what they call bacteria, are the Ubermensch. Okay, that's after self-acid. Now, Gabor, who is in the lowlands, they did Club of Rome, which is climate change. Again, there's a book called Limits to Growth. And check it out, Limits to Growth. What's the limits to growth? If you have sulfur-acid and you lose intel, whether it's in Woolwich with Martin Snowden, in Italy, or in the UN with the Blackman has in the basements and metros, that's called limits to growth. It means that whoever fell with that girl in the UN, or whoever fell with that girl in Woolwich, or in Western Europe, or in the other countries, or even in the CIA, or who has Blackman has with that girl, that's the limits to growth. Limits to growth is, wouldn't you have preferred the intel to be alive and beautiful with the others, rather than have that cacata of a concept? Then you come to me and you say to me, the old news on the news, the nails are have pretenses. Why that shit's empty? Why we're losing intel in the coastlines or somewhere else on the grid? In other words, the reason I would come back as a relic that you try to erase is probably because of that. And that's the old news on the news. So you're not going to start kicking the replacement child just because you have an issue up your ass. Do you understand that? Not this Mafali story with 221 just to have this judgmental shit coming out and saying, well, I got a uniform, and I got a PhD, and I got teaching labs, and I got girlfriends, and I got boyfriend, and send cycles after her. Are you fucking nuts? Check it out, the Roman tribunal was almost like an automatic dagger after the Hague, the Bureau de Veritas of Dirk Kemper. I look like a walking and talking piece of paper. You understand what I'm like, a bag, you know? They say a bag. Well, she don't have a brain. She don't have anything to defend herself after self-harassment. Give her the piece of paper. Scusa me, allora why the fuck I exist? Oh, so that I'm here, and then the relic. Ci credo relic. The first self-harassment on the coastline, già, facevi prima to keep that silent, and let's not speak about Bruno and all that shit. Instead, what did they do? They went like that, and they said, that's the Holy Grail. Vabbè, che so, l'Undertaker of my own self, of my own intel, original intel. Yes, vabbè, allora sai che it's pushing and pushing. And then they say, well, she wasn't alone. Vabbè, allora siamo una merda. Because that's a ship and she's the yacht. In other words, that was July 20. Those are the burnt bridges. They say also in Warsaw. Cioè, di tutti i Warsaw International, so say. A square hostel that's grey. And the bridge that's pink. Excuse me, the other way around. Pink and a bridge that's grey. Excuse me. That's, the bridge is grey with gunshots. So that's the storyline of what happened with that intel. The storyline that became famous in Western Europe, in London, in the UN, and in the other
Now
countries.
approaching South San Francisco.
And then became known for the rompicabeza, or what they call the sulfur acid. Denying this shit, but 2-1, will make you look worse than Iran, worse than Israel, worse than North Korea. But Bana, this is the old news on the news, the nails. Look, I am the one saying that. Look, you're going to turn around and say to me, you know what, I'll tease it, I'll do this and this and this, I'll try and break it. You see, guys, there's no perfection in any intel communities. But with the intel communities, there's not only the genius, but there's also the thinking. And the thinking is, that shit cost, that shit was lost, and it doesn't come back for your ass. But that's it. Unless you can do what those guys all did. And why would they have joined forces on such projects? They would have joined forces on that project because they're bigger than cheap-ass banks that were reopened. Because if you're speaking about butt ugly concept, a bank is ugly, but you can reopen it. That shit, you can't reopen. That was the new stuff. Those are the breaks. Therefore, if you give a share of such proportions, you see, you can't even read the Bible in your head.
This is southbound express train.
You can make a
502,
plummet time
making
that
select
works
stops to
with
San Jose
others,
Deer
whether
Drive.
it's London
Next
or
stop,
Woolwich or the
Millbrae.
UN or Italy, where I was born, and from the countries I come from, and in the CIA. Then you can come along, and after that person is killed, or the intel's lost with sulfur acid, you could put a replacement child.
Doors
Then
are
you say,
closing.
fuck
Please
it,
stay clear and hold
I'm
on.
better than you. Okay, but Ben, a lot of them, what's the point? It's almost like a radio. When the Italians said to me 250 years ago, the radio was invented after sulfur acid. Allora c'è la radio. You have the radio in the house as a replacement child, and you're happy about that. That's a tragedy. So, because of tragedy, this the abominable, the whole shit after sulfur acid. And stupid times. Because you're not looking at intel. None of you know what a wormhole is in the UN. None of you know what the end product worm is, which are already
Please take a
difficult.
moment
None
to
of you
review the
understand the
safety exit
concept
plan
of sulfur
posted on the
acid
wall of each
because
car.
your
This plan
ass
outlines the emergency
is
escape
not
route and the
genetically
unlikely
connected in any
evacuation.
way to that
During an
girl.
onboard emergency,
But mine
please remain
is.
seated until a crew member or emergency responder
Therefore,
provides instructions.
If I was born in Rome, why would they bother to bring back the dad to life on those lines genetically? Yeah. Obviously, they can't bring back 40 Ubermensch in the house. It's illegal after sulfur acid. After sulfur acid, you have the Hague. You don't go near that shit. I don't give it go near. So when they say sick fucks, it's not that they're saying it to me, they're saying it to you. Like, give me that. So that's what we call the basics around the world. So I'm not going to be sitting there and trying to pump, blow smoke up your ass after what happened on the coastlines. I'm just not. Or anywhere else on the planet. But if you can get up and do all the flies and runnings and do your shit and at the same time defend the parents in Fresno and have such a brain, stop comparing yourself. But if you're going to be sitting there and start, to me, when I'm in Italy or in Rome, they look at me like the phenomenon that died. And the same in Woolwich and in London and Western Europe and also, no, internationals. I'm not going to go to the Eastern Bloc. They're my enemies. They're simply my enemies. I'm not Ukrainian. I'm not Romanian. Romania is better because Romania has a tendency to always be put down in Western Europe. So they have the bullies, they have the experience of the Soviets. It's a bit different. But if you go to places like Czechoslovakia, Slovakia, Poland with the moment of Piłsudski and all that, there's pro-Lexic going on, there's Article 7. In other words, nothing has changed in the Eastern Bloc. Romania may have 250 million NATO bases. Has it changed? No. The same with Poland. Has it changed? No. They have the same mentality. Therefore, don't start with me with European politics and all that shit because I go back to kindergarten and I'll slap it silly for that. But hello. So, they have systems. So, what they say, the Polish are highly intelligent because, the cleanest record in the Eastern Bloc, they go from Fresno to Poland to Moscow with the cleanest record in Asia, and the Russians, it's in America, and they have pole exit. They go, okay, did they do pole exit? Normally they didn't do pole exit, because if you did pole exit, Poland would be right now, worse than a dog for Russia. Yeah, don't push it. But they do have Article 7. In fact, Poland has only received the money for windmills, and there's even Hungary got the money, and Hungary is a dog of Russia. Yeah. let's not go into those politics, but va bene, neighbors. Sure. So, at least get the extreme basics. It's not going to be sitting there and trying to smoke up your ass again, for the barons. So when these things happen that many times, now, if you do the flyings beyond the library, it doesn't even start on the library. It's beyond. When I say beyond the library, it's not above and behind. It's beyond. It means that the flyings, I'm going to say the word means to the idiots out there, the flyings is the flyings. The flyings is in other locations in Washington, D.C., in other buildings, where they are, on mountains. Mountains beyond the library. Now eat that. Eat it in your mouth. All right. That's how many times 92, 92 and above happened on the flyings. I was working elsewhere, or that girl was working elsewhere. On 85, 85, the runnings and flyings, it's above the library and behind the library on 85, 85. And near the end of 85, 85, you can see these legs going towards the roof of the library, which means I get self-arrested. So if I say means, on the ghost lines, and I come back like this, like the phoenix. Now, this happens in the US, correct? So you're seeing all these flyers.
This is southbound Express
and all these runners around the
502,
world that many
making
times.
select stops to San Jose Diridon. Next stop.
When they
San
say you're
Mateo.
mentally retarded and you don't give a shit. Okay, then do not have the pretenses of the void on the bus lines. Because even if you have 10 million PhDs, it will not reopen a crapata after that. Then with the ship sinking, then with the yacht, then nothing. Why? Because if you
Doors
have
are
that
closing.
many
Please
flyers,
stay clear
and you
of
have
the
that
line.
many runnings, and you have those guys in boats in the science part on the West Lines or elsewhere, because that's where the work was. Fresno, where the barons are retired. There's no jobs there. And Fresno's going to be sitting there and saying, we are the center of intelligence in the U.S. Fresno's intelligence? For the barons of retirement? Excuse me, but at this stage, you might as well go say to cats and dogs, the birds, even the insects will turn around and take a shit over there.
Caltrain is a proof of payment
And it's not
system.
that I'm being
Please
rude
have your
about
ticket,
it,
credit card,
I'm
or
just
mobile
telling
phone
you
ready for
what
inspection.
they know.
Failure
No,
to
but now they
comply
know
will
this.
result in a
So it's not going to look
$75
at me and say to me, it's only the
citation.
intelligence, it's only the masses, it's only the cats and dogs, the birds and the insects. It's all of the above, idiota. Therefore, if they have the Scotland film and they say, why the fuck can't they stay wrong because of cheap shit in Fresno? But they have a point. So when they say assholes and bitches and whores and stuff, it's one thing dealing with that shit. It's not we're dealing with that shit. Another thing I'd like to point out to the highly intelligent people on this planet is why do you think Natalie Direct from Brussels, the Supreme Court, and Laura Quintus in DC and Langley with the Supreme Court with the hanging benches are defending the barons until today? So you have to, the brain cells, I realize I'm mentally retarded version of myself. I realize that. I'm just saying, and I don't want to keep repeating the same thing, because if I keep repeating the same thing, then you get bored of it. And if you get bored of it, then just slow it down and just shut the fuck up, you crazy bitch, I'll fucking kill you, bitch. Okay, I better. Alright, then let's do the void of the century, right? We're 2 to 1. Shut you up completely. But then you'll have pretenses that shit's empty, and you don't like that concept, that there's losses of intel on the coast lines, and there was a big ship ass, and there's a Bobby, they tried to rest. Shut up. In other words, siamo arrivati al punto that even a radio after self-arrested offends you. Cioè siamo arrivati a Dostoevsky, siamo arrivati al punto che even Dostoevsky can't even make a simple statement, and everybody's so stupid, get offended by everything. Va bene. In other words, io mi sono fatta sto breath of fresh air after self-arrested, this Picasso, yeah. And this thing about crab to crabby, that's another thing that they couldn't look at. On the Grolies, let's call it that, for the parents who were down. Because at the beginning, with so much pain, See, you know what? I was thinking to myself, maybe they did me a lobotomy in the process of the ass wipe, No, we did something else. I'm not looking at them like, excuse me, isn't there the Scotland film? It just clears the whole air out completely. You know, between the lawsuits and all that, coastlines that you don't like, here, there, around the world. Tutti rumors sono like, a me non me ne frega più. By day, basta, connect those guys to combat, John sta sulla panza because those guys are looking at me like this, like what happened to her brain? You know, is that the same girl? But they know. And the tragedy is that they continue without me. It's not for me. For them, that's like, the Holy Grail for me is like, that was my ass on the coastline to want to keep on losing around the world. So that concept, you're welcome. I got it. That's right. Stand there, ain't gonna change it. Man, your genius is phenomenal, well, I'm dead. And that's not even mentioning the father and the mother born in pioneer camps beyond the capital cities, i.e. Piashits, Russian, Norilsk, Turk. You could say Turk, Saudi pioneer camps beyond the... Capito? And I wouldn't say camp, it's already happened. In other words, you can't take pioneers or champions at the age of 5 in sports or other, not only academics, in their countries, loved as people, as individuals, capisci? And you hire them in DC and you place them in Rome as directorates, D1s, D2s, D1s, that's what they were, D2s, I think for like 5-10 years. Then they became D1s. So, the officers were all throw, then later became TCOR and USA. So that's humanitarian leave services. Him in 160, and she in 140. But it's not a question of cash. Now you travel around Africa with groups, compounds, dropping 8 with the helicopters. And also, mostly had to do with natural disasters, mostly. Oslo actually is a natural disaster office. USAID, similar, like...
This is Southbound Express
routes,
502, making select stops to San Jose de Rio.
Tsunamis.
Next stop, Hillsdale.
But anyway, similar. And of course, sometimes if there was Hutsis and Tutsis that try to help, but mostly natural disasters. So that's based in Rome. And there's New York, which
Doors
is...
are closing.
New York
Please take care and
is
hold on.
the politics. New York is, Switzerland is the academics, of schools, education. They're all academic. New York, Rome. You can even say Austria is academic because of the nuclear weapons. But, that's what they call various, they are academics. But they're different academics. So if a child is born in Rome, under the umbrella of that, and comes from that space, or that mir, for instance, I'll give an example. Let's say the head of sciences at Warsaw University is the brother of the mother he's 98 years old, for like 65 years. Nauk, of agriculture, science, technology, and agriculture. And he says, this is cheap shit, that cancer shit, this is cheap shit, cheap shit, cheap shit. You have to go to Moscow, your space came from Moscow. Okay, where mama from? Piashits. Yeah, that's the Arctic Circle. Otherwise, you don't know the history of the Eastern Bloc. Again, we're starting again with this shit. Don't start again with this is all news on the news with the nails, just for me. The cousin of the father was the director of the sciences and agriculture, agriculture in Cairo. Okay, what they say to me? Saudi Mir, what bellows again? This is all news on the news for the nails. In other words, you exterminated that intel on the coastlines. Then you got pissed off that you couldn't do so for us. Then you got pissed off that she wasn't alone. Then you got pissed off that those guys made a point about it in history. Then you got pissed off that those guys in the UN and the corporations were there, have the black mass with her. Then you got pissed off that the other ones joined forces with her like a ship and she's a lawyer. Then you got pissed. My school, this is all news on the news. Live with it. I lived with it. When I was a child, I looked at La Sapienza. There was divisions that were empty and new mathematics. That was you, Amber. It looks like the literature division is emptier.
Now approaching Hillsdale.
In other words, it's not a microchip. Non che ti metti il microchip in culo. Fate the hackers. That's all news on the news. So don't give me to me, you give the intelligent the share of the share, la gloria of the ghost lines and say to me that's all news on the news, and then you bring back a phoenix and it's a big killer. Okay, no. Te rigiriamo noi. And we do our own shit. You don't like the jail, but prima. Look at that shit. They know That's all news on the news. So if you are a genius, do it yourself, and no matter because. For the parents at Fresno, retirement is something else. It's their retirement. And therefore, pare che anzi beyond the gap. Non che tu te ne sta là e dici, oh, don't give a shit. You don't have a father like mine. And you don't have a mother like mine. In fact, to me, you're just a bunch of careerists, bitches, assholes, boyfriends, girlfriends. And if you want to make me crazy after that shit, this little replacement, you go ahead. We'll make a comedy out of it. You won't even know what a comedy is when we finish with this shit. Okay? And I'm going to give it to you the nice way. I'll give it to you the nice way. If you don't get that point.
This is Southbound Express Train
I don't know.
502.
Go back to kindergarten. Go back to college.
Next stop.
Pay $1 million to go to college. Get educated. A me non me ne frega un cazzo. A me don't give a shit about the best. Perché se tu cominci with that idea, oh, Western Europe is shit, Russia is shit, Saudi Arabia is shit, China is shit, the UN is shit, the Germans are shit. Con quell'intelligenza in America che sta like, una cosa you already lost. Quella merda te l'hanno già pigliata prima. E non che questa torna così e mi dice, oddio, you know. And then they said the blues of the pink, they're eggs. Prima di tutto, I don't even think they know how that happened. But vabbè, for that point, and those eggs, I ain't gonna even bother taking children. That's taking nothing. Thank you for all the takings. Arrivederci, sayonara. A sto punto, it's better to stay and roll for retirement e abbiamo finito. Okay? And no complications, no major. What will explain to me that science bad and that science bad?
In the event of an emergency,
for the parents, ma te lo scordi proprio, because
instructions from the train crew or emergency response.
you have, it's worse than a system, it's the major intel. Cioè, non tu sei andato a Roma, Mediterranea, not only in stupid times, they're directorates, D1s. How do you think they got to be directorates, D1s? How do you think? They won't be director general. They want the darkness of them. They want the father. That's what they're good at. D1s is already directorates. It's already on this level of direct. You don't get more than D1s. Look at their work. Look at their work of the father, of the mother. They were speaking about jealousy and envy since I was a child. In effect, yes. If you're looking at civilians, yes. If you're looking at bitches and assholes, yes. If you're looking at careerists, yes. But if you're looking at intel, no. If you're looking at intel, then it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Atom, from your ass. So, okay, space bombs then. Then you have the t-shirts. You have on the t-shirt 696969. Okay, I'm going to be having hallucinations of 696969 Havana since I'm 10 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old in high school, 15 in London. And that's just the people. And just the people, yes. Just the people. Job bad enough when I was connecting the dots with wires to group bars and have to keep my mouth just for myself. In other words, see what intel is. And not compare yourself, well, if I was so arrested, I wouldn't have come back as egg. That's not none of the complicazioni for the parents is something else. So what they're saying? They're saying, save what is beautiful. Save what is easily saved. And fuck person. Intelligence. That's all they're saying. That's all they're saying. And that's all they've been saying. And I'm not going to be sitting there and being like a scrambled egg and then have people say, those guys want to help her? Why do you want to help her? A bitch ass. I just turn around and say, a sto punto sai che faccio clown basta perché se sei retardo sei retardo. And if that offends you, US, arrivederci assai. Poi per essere tutto va.